Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months. Yo, what up, Bolt fam? It's the director. Chargers fans, you know what's kind of crazy? It feels like just yesterday that I was tossing and turning in bed, not able to sleep because I was so excited about Chargers training camp kicking off the next morning. And you know what? We're already a week into the thing, man. How nuts is that? We are so close to the season. You could practically taste it. Preseason's what, like a week away? Training camp has been so much fun. I don't know, man. We're getting close. We're getting close. Training camp has been a really fun one to watch this season, too. Like I mentioned last video, probably one of the funnest that I can remember as a Chargers fan. Super exciting to see all these pieces come together, right? The defense has shown so much promise. They've been a dominating force early in training camp. The offense is also showing some huge potential to maybe maintain that top 5 status from last season. They got some new weapons, right? Some rookies, some free agents. Things are looking good. Things are looking solid. Things are looking like we're on the up and up, and we should have something to be excited about, right? But now that enough time has passed, we're already a week separated from the kickoff of training camp. I figured now would be a good time to get our early winners and losers list posted on the channel. Man, I hate using the word losers, man. If you're in the NFL, good for you, man. You worked hard, you made it, that your dream is coming true. But the harsh reality is it's super competitive out there, man. No matter what you're doing, and specifically in the NFL, especially a team like the Chargers, right? Who have so much talent from top to bottom all over the roster. Everybody's fighting for that roster spot. Even guys like Khalil Mack, veterans, proven, legacy players. He's also putting the work in as if he is a free agent fighting for a roster spot there. So it's looking pretty good, man. So in this list, what we're going to be going after here is I wanted to start highlighting some guys that I think are on the rise. And of course, some guys who we may think are falling behind. But what I wanted to do in this video was, yes, we're going to see like the studs and stars that you would expect to see, like Justin Herbert, Khalil Mack. But I wanted to mainly focus this video on guys who maybe have flown under the radar a little bit and who are just now starting to raise some eyebrows in camp with some big plays, which honestly does carry some big potential into the season. So before we do kick off, guys, question in the comments for those of you who have been keeping up with training camp via my videos, other awesome Chargers content. Who is your early camp star pick after the first week of training camp? It should be very interesting. There's a lot of guys out there making some big plays, but who's your early camp pick at this portion of training camp? Before we do start the video, guys, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. Small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into this one. Lights, camera, action. Chargers training camp week 1 early winners and losers list. This one should be pretty exciting, right? Let's go ahead and kick things off. I have quite a few guys that I do want to talk about, but I wanted to start things off with kind of the obvious, right? Those new free agent guys, right? And again, this is where I mentioned I'm not going to be able to list all the winners. The Chargers are having a really good training camp, but I did want to highlight some of the guys that are grabbing my attention, right? The new guys, all winners, right? Khalil Mack, J.C. Jackson, Sebastian Joseph-Day, Gerald Everett. These guys have been fantastic, and to lightly touch on a few of them, right? Khalil Mack is hungry. Like I said at the top of the show, the mentality that he's bringing into this season is super impressive for a player with his status. And that is going to be something that trickles throughout the entire defense. J.C. Jackson's been just as advertised that we're seeing here on the screen. Very sticky in coverage. Honestly could end the season as a top 5, maybe even top 3 cornerback in the league, where, if you're Brandon Staley and you already have a very impressive defense, that is something to definitely take seriously. Sebastian Joseph-Day is also one that I was really eagerly waiting to see how he would mesh with this defense, and boy, is he doing a great job, man. The dude's a disruptor up the middle. Corey Linsley was mentioning him as one of the best no nose tackles that he's faced in his 8-year career. Very, very nice. And then obviously my still hopeful camp star, Gerald Everett, has been developing some very nice chemistry with Justin Herbert, and just having that security blanket, right, of that tight end with the talent, the speed, the mitts is going to be very nice to see. And he's looking good in camp as well. So let's start digging a little bit deeper into some of the specific players that I wanted to highlight that at least myself and I found very intriguing in terms of what they're doing in camp, you know, the kind of improvements that they're making, and then maybe the guys that might be falling behind just a little bit. So let's start things off with number 5, right? Quickly becoming a fan favorite, one that a lot of us, me included, man, on draft day when we selected, you know, Josh Palmer, I was a little bit confused. I was like, wait a minute, what? Because he was flying under the radar hard for everybody in that draft. But the Chargers, who have just been pretty impressive, right? We'll say in the last couple of seasons in their draft and in their scouting, really were able to hone in on this guy because he was so good at beating some of the best DBs in the country in his collegiate career. And man, he's really starting to flash that in year 2 of his NFL career, because in training camp, man, dude, this dude is looking absolutely electric. There's quite a few, I would say. If you guys aren't following the Chargers on Twitter, definitely do so, because there's constantly being posted these highlights from camp and games, etc., etc. There are a steady stream of Josh Palmer highlights just making some absolutely insane plays. And again, one of the biggest winners, I would say, from Chargers training camp so far is the DB position in general. Sante Samuel Jr., J.C. Callahan, these guys have been very, very good. So it only speaks to and elevates how good Josh Palmer has been so far in camp. His routes, separation, they were already pretty impressive in his rookie season, and it feels like they're developing at an accelerated rate at this point, right? They look really, really good. He's made some big plays. He's really starting to flash that huge upside of, you know, that Chargers, you know, future wide receiver that we're going to have for very, very many years. He's going to get a lot of slot work, this guy. He plays very nice on the outside too. The one lacking element of Josh Palmer is probably his speed, but you know what? A lot of people said the same thing about Keenan Allen, and he turned out to be one of the best Chargers wide receivers in history. Am I saying that about Josh Palmer? Maybe not, but at the same time, he's really starting to show us, you know, why the Chargers put so much faith in him a couple seasons back in terms of drafting. So it looked very, very nice, man. I think he'll likely play a majority of wide receiver 3 snaps. There's a lot of debate as to whether, you know, the Chargers will be rotating guys in at that position. I think I have a little bit more clarity with another guy later down the road that we'll try and get to the bottom of that with. So Josh Palmer, my first winner on this list. Next up, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Rashawn Slater / Zion Johnson. Now, first off, you know, a tip of the cap, man, to Tom Telesco and Brandon Staley for this incredible turnaround on the offensive line. Talk about a quick turnaround, right, man? This Chargers offensive line, if you guys remember a couple years back, was almost unwatchable. You know, Phillip Rivers running for his life, even Justin Herbert, his rookie season, running for his life. The Chargers have done such a good job at really overturning this position. And now I would say it's well above average in terms of comparing it to the rest of the NFL. Now, specifically on the offensive line for this segment, Slater and Johnson, these guys have been fantastic. I would say what's kind of funny, you know, when you think of camp highlights, you think, oh man, that incredible catch, you know, it came down with it in triple coverage, things that Josh Palmer does on the daily, right? But no, my camp highlight so far, as far as like the clips that I have seen and some of the plays that have been made, was without a doubt that matchup of Rashawn Slater versus Khalil Mack that you're seeing here on the still. That was such a display of power and technique in competition, and you got the whole iron sharpens iron thing again. It all was really, it enveloped in those few seconds in those clips. If you guys haven't checked it out, please definitely go see if you can find a highlight on Twitter or something. That was one of the most impressive things I've seen in a while, and got me very excited because of the potential of the offensive line as well as Khalil Mack. It's very rare that you see something that kind of works for both sides in those instances, right? And Slater, without a doubt, is starting to look like one of the top left tackles in the NFL, which is absolutely crazy in my mind. A lot of people passed up on this guy because he wasn't the physical archetype that you were looking for in terms of his height, I guess. He's got plenty of strength, but he's just looking so good. He's getting so much praise from, you know, all over the coaching. The other offensive lineman, Corey Linsley, probably being the most experienced. He's got his mind blown by Rashawn Slater and his performance so far this offseason. So that was one to watch. And then also I wanted to tack on there Zion Johnson, because he's off to a very big start as well. Again, it's kind of weird going back-to-back seasons with, pretty good offensive linemen being drafted by the Chargers. They are more or less hit or miss, right? Have you guys heard the news about Trevor Penning? Remember all that, paranoia we were having about selecting him in the first round? We're like, oh my God, if we have to, I guess, but we really don't want to. Well, thank God that didn't work out, because the dude's a hothead. He's losing it. He's causing fights in camp. There's a lot of instances where offensive linemen do not work out. And the Chargers really hit the nail on the head last season with Rashawn Slater, and it's really feeling like they're doing the same thing with Zion Johnson here back-to-back seasons, right? He's off to a very big start. Maybe it took him a little bit of time to warm into it, to transition into camp a little bit. But the last, over the first few days, but the last, couple of days, the last, I'd say 3 or 4 days, he's looked insane. His biggest play was by far, in my opinion, one that made a lot of Chargers fans maybe chuckle inside, was a nasty pancake versus Tillery. Tillery on the ground, Zion Johnson standing. It was I don't know. When you talk about Zion Johnson, after witnessing what we saw with Rashawn Slater, it's not too far out of the realm of possibility to think that we're going to see something very similar in terms of their rookie year. Which, again, Slater, that does not happen often. To get that twice in a row is pretty spectacular in my mind. So he's flashing, similar upside to Slater in his rookie season. I think they're going to be absolutely fantastic. We got to move on. Not a lot of people love the offensive line talk. That's fine. I'm still going to talk about it, but it's definitely something that gets me excited this season. Next up, can you guys maybe guess this one? The Chargers and Jerry Tillery. We got another. Unfortunately, I hate saying it because I sound like a bully, but there's another loser in this category. I hate to say it. Jerry Tillery. Just like we mentioned the big play for Zion Johnson, it's probably a demerit for Jerry Tillery, man. He got bodied by a rookie pretty hard, and that wasn't the first or even the last play in which we saw Jerry Tillery falter, right? And this is crazy to think about because Tillery is in a contract year, right? You got to improve this season. Even if you don't stay with the Chargers, you got to put up a fight so you get another contract from another team in 2023. And so far, I'm not seeing very many signs from Jerry in terms of that big leap we're hoping to see in the Staley system. And that's really unfortunate, right? We talked a lot about the offensive line. And again, yes, the offensive line has been very strong. The Chargers have themselves a very solid group of dudes protecting Justin Herbert. And that does make it tough for guys like Jerry Tillery. But you know what? The other defensive linemen that we've been seeing, Fox, Fayoko, Sebastian Joseph Day, Johnson, these guys are all showing way more production. At this point, man, I don't know where Jerry Tillery sits with the team. I know the team wants to keep him around, or at least, this season, of course. I've heard a lot of things about him being very liked in the organization, but at the same time, you got to put up better production than what we saw last year. And at this point, if Tillery, in my opinion, is going to remain on the roster, he needs to have a big closing to training camp and maybe some, nice plays in preseason. Otherwise, I do feel like his roster spot is in jeopardy. So Jerry Tillery is going to add another tick mark to the loser category on the video. Next up, this next dude, man, he kind of came out of nowhere, right? I think a lot of us were pretty excited about the signing this offseason, but we had kind of a thing in our mind of what he'd be doing. Never in a million years did we think DeAndre Carter would explode onto the scene the way he has been. Now, Carter, again, obvious winner right now, in my opinion. He's quickly emerging as a camp star, right? We've been talking, at the top of the videos, like, who's your camp star? Right now, in my opinion, I think DeAndre Carter makes a pretty good case, man, because we assumed when we signed him that he would be, Andre Roberts 2.0, right? And Roberts was really good for the special teams. Very good returner. Had the biggest upside we've seen in a long time in terms of yards on special teams for the Chargers. Well, this is not what DeAndre Carter is, right? DeAndre Carter is also a weapon for Justin Herbert, and a very versatile one at that. The reason that Carter is starting to turn heads, right, is because of the production he's putting on the field during training camp. More specifically, I would say, in the red zone. The dude has 4 touchdowns over the last 3 practices. He is not just a return specialist. This is somebody that the Chargers want to utilize as a weapon, and it's very, very obvious. And this just kind of heralds back to the whole philosophy of Brandon Staley in my mind. It feels like he wants to squeeze every drop of value out of this roster. And to have just a return specialist maybe doesn't quite do it for Brandon Staley. He wants a return specialist that also can contribute on offense. And so far, DeAndre Carter has not just, contributed. He's been exceeding expectations in terms of what he can do and what he probably will do in the season. Because some people, again, he's been fantastic in terms of his speed, his routes, his hands, especially in the red zone. But some would also suggest that in combination with what we've seen in the past, DeAndre Carter may also be a trick play weapon for Justin Herbert and Joe Lombardi more specifically, because you guys know Joe Lombardi loves his end arounds, his bubble screens. He'll be able to get that wide receiver production from a guy like DeAndre Carter. And Carter, dudes, my goodness, he, again, kind of took me by surprise. I was excited when we signed him. I was like, yeah, we need another returner. He looks very solid, but it really looks like Carter is headed his way to maybe a considerable amount of snaps on the offense as well come kickoff. So Carter, in my opinion, I think the bottom line with him is that he's the complement to Jalen Guyton as far as speed. We wanted speed. He is the complement to Jalen Guyton that we thought we needed in the draft. And it took all the way up to now in training camp and seeing those skills on display for even me and most Chargers fans to understand what DeAndre Carter's role is going to be with the team. So very, very cool. All right, we got to move on. I love these long videos, man, but I start getting steamed and I don't want these to be too long. So we're just going to jump right into the next guy right here. Breiden Fehoko. He's going to be a winner on this list, right? And it's because I would say of the improvement off already of something pretty impressive from last year, because Fehoko is building off a year in which he ended the season as the best run stopper at the defensive tackle position. He looks really good versus the run, which is kind of crazy to think because the Chargers struggled so mightily, but it's because Fehoko, in my opinion, did not get enough snaps. As soon as we saw Jerry Tillery, faltering, as soon as we saw, the problems we were having versus the run, we should have bit the bullet as in terms of, we want that first rounder out there and just put Breiden Fehoko in because he's been fantastic. So he's already, off to a good start from last season. But even beyond that, it's evident that he's been putting in the work this offseason too, because he's been a disruptor up the middle. Right, he's still been very good versus the run. He's been blowing up double teams. He's been getting back there, getting to the running back. He's been very, very nice. But the biggest thing that I'm excited to see is that it really does show that he's been working and improving on his skills as a pass rusher up the middle as well, right? I think I saw in an article that he was working with Joey Bosa and learning those swipe moves and stuff like that. And it really is kind of starting to translate. He's showing flashes of that. So Breiden Fehoko, man, I've been pretty impressed with him past couple of seasons now. Of course, the Haka clip from Hard Knocks certainly does not hurt his chances in building favor with the director. But at the same time, man, what he's showing on the field and the improvements and the work that he's putting in is translating to some nice reps in practice, which is definitely getting me pretty excited. Now, Fehoko is in a loaded defensive line room. We got Covington. We got, of course, Tillery, Spacios de Austin. There's a lot of names back there. And, of course, the rookie Tito. So he's, at this point, Fehoko is fighting for a roster spot. But he, at least early to me, he really is standing out. And I'm very much so hoping the Chargers make the right choice and make sure he stays on the roster. Next up, we got... I would say, again, I would call him, in some terms, a fan favorite, right? I love the dude. I think he's a great personality. I think that he's shown great production in the past, but Michael Davis on this list, unfortunately, is going to be in the category of loser. And again, I hate saying that, but unfortunately, it's just kind of the reality of what we're seeing right now. And he's fighting for snaps because of the way that the roster's been turned over, right? He's been kind of buried behind J.C. Jackson, Asante Samuel Jr., Bryce Callahan, and it feels like those guys have been so elevated, especially Callahan in terms of, who's playing the slot, who's playing outside, Mike Davis, Asante Samuel Jr. It feels like that's been done because Staley really has put a big emphasis on ball skills, going up there, grabbing interceptions, making disruptions that way, trying to generate more turnovers. I feel like that's a big theme of this offseason. We got to generate more picks, fumbles, etc. We got to get the ball back to Justin Herbert. And although Michael Davis, like we're seeing in this picture, has logged a pick in camp, I think he's still showing signs of growing pains in Brandon Staley's system. He was a very good, cover 3 corner, I would say, a couple seasons back. That's the reason why he got the extension with the Chargers. But it really does feel like in this system, the other guys kind of fit what Brandon Staley wants to do a little bit more. And with other DBs like Nasir Taylor, Dean Leonard, these guys on the rise, it's an unfortunate turn of events for Michael Davis after a promising season a couple years back. So Michael Davis, unfortunately, I hope things change. If anything, we have a very, very solid depth corner. And again, I still think he's going to be involved, of course, but just not as predominantly as we had once thought. So Michael Davis, I'm pulling for you, man. At the same time, though, the Chargers do have a lot of competition in that DB room. Next up, let's talk a little bit about Spiller and Horvath. Of course, these guys labeled winners for the Chargers. The Chargers running back room, again, one of those positions that really got overhauled, right? The Chargers were so serious about getting an RB2. And I think they landed a blockbuster addition here in Isaiah Spiller, man. Spiller is looking like the locked and loaded running back too. And I think it really is because of what training camp speaks to us a little bit, right? Because he and Eckler have been the main focus of snaps on the first team offense, right? They have absolutely been dominating in terms of touches there. And honestly, Spiller, when given the opportunity, he's been making big plays as well. Specifically, I would say, I mean, he's been looking great as a runner, but specifically showing off superb receiving skills. And when you're talking about getting a guy that specifically complements a guy like Austin Eckler, you know, if Austin Eckler's off the field, you want a guy that can step on, that carries a lot of what Eckler can do. Of course, Eckler, a superstar, Spiller, a rookie, but both of them having great pass catching upside definitely does not hurt the chances of Spiller becoming more involved this season. So I like Spiller a lot, man. I think he's going to have himself a nice season. Then meanwhile, Xander Horvath, again, another Chargers fan favorite, he's perhaps carving out himself a new role on this team. Now, first and foremost, you know, Xander Horvath is a fullback, right? But after seeing his big plays, we've seen some nice receptions by Xander Horvath, some nice runs. After seeing those plays, after seeing his physical attributes, his speed, his size, his power, it seems that Joe Lombardi, the Chargers offensive coordinator, wants him more involved as a running back as well. So in my opinion, Horvath could serve as a fullback, running back hybrid, which would allow the Chargers to shave down the roster even further, because then you can start thinking about Austin Eckler at 1, Spiller at 2, maybe Roundtree or Kelly at 3, and then Horvath at 4, and he also plays the position of fullback. You could even shave it down a little further if you wanted to. It's kind of crazy to think the possibilities that Horvath offers the Chargers by playing both of those roles going into the season. So very, very good. Now, speaking of running backs, and unfortunately for Larry Roundtree, we have to tack on another player here to the loser column, okay? And it's because of, you know, again, what we're seeing from the other halfbacks on the roster. With Xander Horvath being a little bit more flexible, Isaiah Spiller taking the RB2 role, it seems, and running with it, the Chargers maybe, again, be able to shave down the roster a little bit more than we had thought. And Roundtree seems to kind of be the forgotten player at this point. Because with Spiller and Horvath showing big potential, Roundtree, at least in training camp right now, has only really been seen working with the 2s, with the 3s. He hasn't really been featured in a way that speaks that he's going to have a predominant role with the team going forward. Because he, along with a few, you know, promising undrafted free agents, these guys are going to have a tough time making the team, with the Chargers, you know, other running backs being far superior. So unfortunately for Larry Roundtree, it's not looking good. Even Joshua Kelly at this point, which again, he's a very strong cut candidate for me. I feel like he's had more upside and more usage in training camp because of his abilities as a blocker. So unfortunately for Larry Roundtree, we got to wait and see what happens. His roster spot could be in jeopardy because of the talent surrounding him in that Chargers locker room. Next up, again, Chargers have a lot of fan favorites. You guys are some awesome fans. You really love your players. Another fan favorite for the Chargers, Donald Parham, is going to tack on another winner to this list. Chicken Parm, man. I know a lot of us were pretty devastated when we saw that injury last season, man, and he's bouncing back from it. That injury was nasty last year, but he's coming back, and he's looking better than ever. You know what? It does feel like he's leveled up a little bit, too. He was already pretty nice, man, but it feels like he's getting really involved in training camp this year. He's getting a nice number of targets in camp. And I think a big reason for this is, again, the continuity of the offensive coordinator. Justin Herbert's really never had back-to-back years with the same offense, right? Well, this season, it feels like Justin Herbert, with that continuity, is starting to find other things to build on other than just understanding the playbook. Because the playbook, he's understanding, he's getting better at it. But one big concept that I would love to see him and Donald Parham utilize more is potential for a massive mismatch. Donald Parham's like 6'8", 6'9", huge target. He's got speed for such a big target. When able to identify that he's got the size advantage, a considerable one, it feels like Justin Herbert is playing into that advantage just a little bit more here in training camp. We've seen plenty of targets to Donald Parham when he's been lined up against Bryce Callahan. And Bryce Callahan's only like 5'8", 5'9", a bit of a shorter DB. And that's been a really fun match to watch. Because on one hand, Donald Parham, size advantage, he's been having some plays, right? He's been coming down with some catches. But on the other hand, Bryce Callahan, even though he's a smaller dude, has been making some big plays to, break up passes and stuff like that. It's been pretty interesting to watch. But either way, Donald Parham's been very involved. It looks like he's going to be maybe one of those guys that you feature in the red zone, but one that Justin Herbert is really starting to build some chemistry with in terms of utilizing his size and speed. He's been looking very nice. Next up, as we close out, or as we're getting close to closing out this list, we have another winner for the Chargers. We're going to go ahead and throw up number 24 on the screen, Nasir Adderley. Now, Adderley feels like he's finally been unleashed in this new system, right? His speed, his ball hawking ability, these are starting to be flexed because of something in the Brandon Staley system, right? Maybe the versatility, rotating the defense, moving pieces around. It feels like Adderley is finally playing up to speed, right? He's got some speed on him, but I feel like he was somewhat reserved in years past. Now it's really starting to show great promise to better position himself for interceptions, to make big plays. He's been looking great in camp. Interceptions, pass breakups. He's kind of been better in terms of his positioning. And if he can get that positioning down, one of the biggest reasons that we even drafted Nasir Adderley was for the ball skills, right? The ability to go up there and create turnovers. And I feel like this season, we're starting to see things mesh a little bit more in terms of getting that result out of Nasir Adderley. So he's going to be a winner here in this training camp. And again, I think a lot of people have seen that one, but very, very excited to see if he can really explode onto the scene next year, because I would like to see him get an extension with the Chargers. And lastly, a couple outliers that I did want to kind of mention at the tail end of the video. Jalen Guyton. Is he a winner? Is he a loser in this camp? I have to kind of label him as both at this point, right? Because it's a bit of a curious situation for Jalen Guyton. DeAndre Carter, one of the biggest winners on this list that you've seen so far, he's been so mind-bogglingly good that he might actually start eating into Jalen Guyton's touches, if that makes sense. Because Guyton, who's been solid all camp, he's been very nice. He was viewed as the potential wide receiver 3, we'll say B, to Josh Palmer's wide receiver 3A. But on top of that, when you add on top of that the fact that Palmer's been so dominant, and now, DeAndre Carter, his explosion onto the scene, this could bump Guyton down even just a skosh in terms of his potential touches for the year. Now, that being said, again, Guyton has shown a lot of improvement. He remains maybe the best deep threat, for Justin Herbert on this roster, and no doubt he'll be involved in this offense. But with Carter on the rise, the shared role will likely not come at the position of wide receiver 3. A lot of us thought wide receiver 3 was Josh Palmer, Jalen Guyton. But instead, the shared position might be wide receiver 4, where Jalen Guyton and DeAndre Carter will provide their speed for whatever plays the Chargers are trying to win over top. So that's kind of where we're at right now with Jalen Guyton. Definitely not a loser, but again, there are some things kind of eating into maybe his potential for 2022. And then lastly, the last guy I wanted to mention, because this one to me is pretty important in some ways, is JT Woods. A lot of people curious about JT Woods. And this one, I'm just going to label as to be determined, right? Because this one's tough for me. I'm a big fan of JT Woods. I think his size, his speed, his potential are very, very nice. But I can't declare him a winner or loser quite yet, because Woods has flashed what has made him special, right? His size, his speed, his ball hawking ability. There has been evidence of that in camp. But also, there has been evidence of a little bit of struggle in coverage, right? There have been some big plays made in JT Woods' area. And it's not for his lack of speed. It's not for a lack of his attributes, but a lack of positioning and awareness seems to be the culprit here. Now, he's still a rookie. He's got time. Maybe he starts to really click at the end of camp and in a preseason. But for now, I wanted to mention him because expectations at this point should maybe be tempered just a little bit, just slightly, in what he'll be able to contribute in his rookie season. He's going to have to improve in his coverage a little bit. But even then, he does have some nice upside. So, guys, let me know in the comment section below. Of course, we're not going to have time to cover every single, winner and loser from camp, but the Chargers definitely have a nice handful of winners so far. Again, we didn't even mention Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa. We didn't mention some of the other offensive linemen that have looked good. The Chargers wide receivers, Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, they looked fantastic. The DBs as a whole looked fantastic. Let me know some of these other names that maybe we didn't mention on here that you would label as a winner, maybe even some losers as well to get on our radar that you're considering here at the beginning of Chargers training camp. We're 1 week in. We have 1 week until preseason. Chargers kickoff is just around the corner. Things are starting to heat up. It's getting very excited. And at the same time, the Chargers, with all of these, again, so many more winners and losers on this list, with all this potential, it really does feel like everything is complementing each other, or everybody is complementing each other in such a way that this team is really proving they are the real deal going into 2022. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. If you liked what you saw here, hit us up with a like and sub on your way out. We'll see you next time. And as always, bolt up and stay frosty. My, oh my, man. DeAndre Carter, who would have thunk it?